Hey, my name is Matt Storr and I repair saxophones for a living, and today I'd like to talk to you about porosity in pad leather. Now, this is not something that's typically talked about, and if you do talk about it, people might look at you like you're crazy, and some people get really upset about it. But I guess that's just kind of talking about saxophone stuff in general, and pretty much anything in general on the internet. If you go deep enough, you're going to find someone mad about it. So what I've got here are several different pad leathers from several different upper end pads, right? These are all professional quality pads. And what I've found over time is that not all pad leathers are equal, and some of them actually have little pores in the skin, and air can pass through it. And what's underneath, the skins is felt, right? And air can pass through the felt. Now, I can personally definitely tell the difference between a horn that is otherwise well sealing but has porous pads and a horn that doesn't. Now, I'm not going to tell you who made these pads. Regardless of what you think you know, there are more than one maker that makes pads that looks like each of these, right? So I'm not going to specifically talk about any pads except for the ones that I use, which I've got here. The Ferree's B52 made, or not B52, I think it's the B49. Shoot, I forget. I've said it somewhere else. They're made by Pizzoni, and sometimes they're porous. I kind of check each pad. Sometimes they're not. The examples I have here, I think one of them might be a little bit porous and one of them shouldn't be. This is as it comes, and this is treated, just for interest's sake, this is treated with the lacquer spray treatment that I do. So pads being porous, I mean, it's skin, right? And skin has pores and has hairs in it. And depending on which type of treatment you use, where the leather comes from, it may or may not be true pneumatic leather. Now, what do I mean by pneumatic leather? Pneumatic, pneumatic leather. It's the kind of leather that is, by the way, this is a cool book if you're really, really geeky about leather. But the leather that is to be used in situations where it is supposed to be airtight should be pneumatic leather, right? Now, not all leather is pneumatic. And mostly you won't hear people talking about that when they're talking about the pads that they use. And some people will say that, yes, they even know that their pads have pores in them, but it doesn't matter. As long as the skin seals to light, as long as your leak light that you're using, right? Talking about putting this inside the horn and testing that you can't see light coming out from around the edges of the tone holes when you depress a pad. As long as it passes that test, that is enough. But I think that the light test is basically just shorthand for finding out whether it is supposed to be airtight. And if the skins have pores, it's not going to be airtight. And what happens is, as let's say each one of these is a tone hole on the horn, right? And they're all closed. I've got, I'm playing low D or something like that. As the sound waves travel down the horn, you've got high pressure waves and you've got low pressure waves moving back and forth. The high pressure waves go past a porous pad and a few molecules of air squirt out, right? The low pressure wave goes past that tone hole with the porous pad and a few molecules of air get pulled in. And that decreases the amplitude, right? From your highs to your lows is now a shorter distance. And there's another word for that. It's called reducing the volume, right? It's literally turning down the volume. Now, sometimes you can actually see the pores in leather. Let's see if you can. Do you see that there? Let's see if I get close. See how there's actually holes? Yeah, that's pretty good. This is extremely porous leather. These are pads that I got because I'm always looking for if there's another type of pad I can use. This skin is really durable, which is really nice, but it is not pneumatically tight. It is extremely porous and a lot of air can go through there. I mean, if we put this over a pipe with pressurized air and put it underwater, the center hole notwithstanding, it would look like a fish tank bubbler. Now, sometimes pads can be somewhat porous. Oops, that bulb is hot. But you can't really see it with the light. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of silicone pad treatment, and we can see what it looks like when I take a little bit of this silicone pad treatment and paint it on these pads, and we can see whether it sits or whether it soaks. Let's see here. Oh, you know what? That might be kind of hard to see. Let me move my camera down a bit. And turn a light on. Let's see if that makes it better. Okay, there we go. So you can see putting the silicone treatment on all of them. Whoop, that one just completely soaked it up. So that's a very porous pad, really sucks. That would be air or liquid. Same with that one. It just sinks right into it, soaks it right up. Here's the untreated version of the pads I use. The treated version of the pads I use. Now let's do the super porous one. And then this one here, which is untreated and I know is also fairly porous. I'll take the camera out and we can look a little closer at all of these. So we can see that's soaked in pretty fast. This is still, some of it sitting on the surface, but we can see it starting to go through. We can actually, like in the light, we can see some of those pores. I mean, you see, like, do you see all those pores there? Isn't that crazy that that's a saxophone pad? Here's the kind I use. You can see it's still sitting on the top. The treated version, still completely sitting on the top. This one, it is soaked through. The pores are not quite so visible as the totally nutso one. This one, it's just gone, completely soaked through. This one, it's still sitting on top a bit. Right? Now, it's kind of hard to tell just by looking at it if your pad's going to be porous unless it's like obscene like this one. One of the tests you can do is take like a metal tube that has like a smooth end, and you can actually just put it right on the pad and do like a suction test like a straw, right? And at the end of this video, I'm going to either link down below, or if I can, I'll see if I can append an example of that test. You can see here, like, you know, it just, this is silicone, it's super, super thin, it's just sitting right on top. It's not going through this one. That's what the back of that looks like. And see the back of the super porous one, you can actually see like around the pores where it came through. This one is a little foggier. This one, we can actually see the moisture on the back side. This one as well, it's just coming right through, and we can see the pores a bit better on this side of this pad. And like I said, kind of oddly, people, you know, argue about this as if it's not a big deal. But I can definitely tell it in the playing, and it doesn't really take, like, you know, you don't have to be a rocket surgeon to understand what's happening here, right? I mean, imagine that this is your, like, if we did a spectrograph of your sound. This is obviously extremely rough. A lot of people love to, you know, talk about all the graduate theses they've read and stuff. I am not an acoustician. I just fix and play saxophone. But let's say this is your fundamental. Here's your octave. Here's your fifth. Here's your fourth, third, and then down, right? That would be like a spectrogram of the saxophone sound. Now, if we shave off a little bit of that amplitude, this stuff is going to suffer a lot more than this one, right? Like if we erase just a little bit of each of these, right? Not too much has changed for the major, like the fundamental, the octave, the fifth, the fourth, but the little stuff up here, the tiny parts of the sound that really give it its character, richness, and also sort of its brightness and punch, that stuff just gets swallowed up by tiny little leaks that turn the amplitude down. And in my experience, the main way you can tell if a saxophone has porous pads but is otherwise sealing well is just like a dead feeling. It's like someone has like a, you know, like a cotton ball stuffed in the neck or something. Like everything's coming out, everything's fine, but it's just missing all the little bits of the sound that make it like interesting and unique. It takes away the fingerprint and turns it into something very plain. So that is porous pads. Again, check out the description to see a actual physical test of this being, of, you know, porosity being shown on a Magnehelic leak detecting machine. This is just a visual demonstration. I do not own a Magnehelic. They're like pretty expensive for, you know, I've got that other video of like doing the leak test with the glove on the bell. That's more my style. But yeah, hopefully you found this helpful, useful, informative. Just a little bit of rundown on pad porosity, an issue to be aware of, something to think about. If you do have a horn overhaul with porous pads, it's not the end of the world. It just will feel kind of like the horn's a bit dead. But if you have a horn that's overhauled well with pads that are non-porous, either because the leather is pneumatically sound or because it's been treated in some way, the difference to me is palpable. But of course, you've got to get there in the first place to having an overhaul done with no leaks, because one moderate size leak is probably going to outweigh the cumulative effects of porous pads, unless they're as porous as this one here, in which case the horn's going to feel like there's an issue with it, like there's a leak, like there's something wrong. Even if it won't feel like a dead horn, it'll feel like a problem horn. But usually what you're going to have is a horn that feels dead. All right, that's it. My name is Matt Storer. I pair saxophones for a living. Thanks for watching. Oh, and you might notice my wrist is mostly healed up, right? I'm back to work.